Okay, what we're going to do this time is we're going to talk about using classes and IDs and the span tag to select different parts of the page to define new selectors to allow us to apply CSS. So what we have here is we have part of Romeo and Juliet. You're going to get a little bit of culture along with your CSS learning in this episode, and it's just a basic part of the script in HTML. Romeo says something, Juliet says something, they meet for the first time, they flirt a little bit, and finally at the end he kisses her hand. So let me show you what this looks like in the browser real quick. Straightforward, not a whole lot of appeal or zazz to it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to apply some styles that highlight Romeo's lines and Juliet's lines in different colors so we can see them a little bit better. So I'm going to go back to the HTML and I'm going to talk about the problems we have here. If we were using an HTML tag as a selector, our only bet here would be the P tag. But we can't apply two different styles because if we apply to the P tag, then everything would be highlighted in yellow. Romeo's lines because it's enclosed in the P tag, as well as Juliet's lines enclosed in the P tag. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up some classes that allow us to differentiate those two paragraphs from each other, and then we're going to apply styles to them so we can target those different paragraphs with a style. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here in the head section, and we're going to do this in one fell swoop. Now we could go through with inline styles and on every P tag put an inline style, but again, this is a small part of the play. If we wanted to do this throughout the whole play, it would drive us crazy. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up into the head section and we're going to go ahead and create an embedded style. So we add the style tags and give ourselves a little bit of room to type. So we're going to create a new selector. Instead of putting the P tag as the selector here in our embedded style sheet, what we're going to do is we're going to put period and we're going to make up a name, no spaces, for our class. In this case, it kind of makes sense that we have a Romeo class, and in a minute we'll define a Juliet class too. So the syntax or the rules of punctuation are you put a dot and then the name of the class. And then you define it like normal. So we have curly braces, and let's make this completely stereotypical. Let's have the background color be blue. Because we're changing the background color to blue, we probably want to change the color of the font to white so it's a little bit easier to read. So we have this style now named Romeo where the background color is going to be blue and the font color is going to be white. So we're going to go ahead and do another one. We're going to do dot Juliet, and we're going to have a background, and we need to spell it correctly or it won't work, a background dash color of pink, and we can go ahead and you leave the font color at black because it'll show up well on that pink background. So there are two steps to this process. We've created the selectors, .Romeo and .Juliet. These are classes that we've defined. We've set the properties and the values that we want. Now all we have to do is we have to come into the text and determine where we're going to apply those classes. And what you normally do is you assign a tag to a certain class, and then it'll inherit the styles that are assigned to that class. So what we can do is we can come down into this P tag and tell the browser that this P tag belongs to the class named Romeo, and the browser knows that means it needs to go back up to the head section of the document, find the class named Romeo, and figure out what styles it needs to apply. So just with a little bit of cutting and pasting, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to scroll through and paste that into every line that Romeo has in this scene. So we go down. Yeah, he's still trying to talk her into giving up her hand for kissing. And then, uh-oh, we're talking about sin now because he did just kiss her hand. All right, so that takes care of Romeo's lines. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I'm going to switch back to the browser and reload it to show you what effect that has. So notice every one of Romeo's lines now highlighted in blue. So to take care of Juliet's, we do the same thing. We just need to go into Juliet's paragraphs and assign her to the class equal to Juliet. We're going to copy that, and we're going to go ahead and paste that into all of the P tags that are enclosing her lines as well. And so that allows us to, again, differentiate these P tags from each other. We don't have to stick with just redefining tags. We have a little bit more flexibility now. So I go back to the browser, reload that, and now we have the effect we were going to. We had to write 2 lines of style declarations, and we did have to go in and put those classes on everything. But again, if we were to add more of the play to this page, then we would only have to assign the appropriate words, the appropriate lines to the exact class we wanted them to be. All right, so let's talk about another type of selector we can create. Another type of selector we can create is called an ID. And it does pretty much the same thing as the class, but instead of targeting a certain element on the page, what this does is it allows you to set up a certain area on the page. And the most common ones that you're going to see in this case are pound header, pound footer, and sometimes you'll have pound sidebar, pound nav, or something like that. And so what you're doing is you're setting up a certain area on your page and applying a style to that area, but it works pretty much the same. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a footer on this page. So I go ahead and define the footer, and I'd still go ahead and define the same thing. I'm going to have background dash color. We're going to be wild and crazy colorful here, green. And let's just do font size. Since this is the footer, this is the copyright information that a lot of people don't read. You don't want to spend a whole lot of real estate on it. So let's go ahead and make this a small font of 8 point. So we go ahead and we save that, and then we can come down to this area to the very end of the page. We can set up a new P tag. This time, instead of using the class, we're going to say the ID is equal to footer. And we're going to type, this is the copyright info that you really don't want to read. We change that, close that P tag. We save that, and then when we go look at it and reload it, when we scroll down, we see our new footer area in green and in really small font. So again, they both kind of do the same thing, but realistically what happens is with an ID, you're setting a part of the page, really staking out real estate, whereas with a class, you're choosing elements on the page that are going to inherit that style. Let me talk to you about a couple more things before we end this lesson. One other thing you might really want to do is you might want to apply a style to something that's not directly tied to a tag, which makes it very hard to tie a style to. You can't even do an inline style. So for example, let's say that we were doing a study in this scene talking about how much Shakespeare talks about lips. And so we wanted to come in and we wanted to highlight, for some reason, every place he uses the word lips. And this is very difficult because we can't just come in here and put a style equals because it's not tied to anything. There's no HTML tag there that allows you to attach either a class or to do an inline style. So what I'm going to show you right now is a new tag that allows you to do this. It kind of puts whatever it surrounds in kind of a shoebox type of thing, and then allows you to apply the style to the shoebox, and then everything in that shoebox inherits that. So I'm going to go ahead and put a span tag around lips here, and I'm going to go ahead and close the span tag. Let me find one other place where he uses lips. Just a minute. There There's it is. So we'll go ahead and span that. And if we were doing this for real, then we would put the span tag around it everywhere, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing that. I just want to show you how this works. And so what that does is it now gives you a container for that information that you can now apply a style. So we can come up here, create a new class named lips, and let's just say background color is going to be red, and the color of the font we're going to change to white also. So now, because we have that span tag in there, we can easily come in and use our class there. Notice when I assign the class, there's not a closing class tag because it's an attribute of the HTML tag itself. Also notice that I do not use the dot when I'm assigning it, only when I'm defining it. So class equals lips, it doesn't equal dot lips. Whereas when I define it, you'd put dot lips. So we save this, and now automatically when we reload in those two places, it didn't work. Let me take a peek. I'll let you look at my process for debugging things. Span class equals lips. Oh, because I'm not scrolled up to the top of the page. Sorry for wasting 2 minutes or an extra minute of your time on this, but it shows you right there that it indeed does highlight the things that you have. So one last thing I want to show you is a selector called a pseudo class. To do this, I'm going to put a link in. At the very top of our page, I'm going to say ahref is equal to HTTP. I don't know if this works, if this is really a website, so we'll hope for the best. It's http://www.shakespeare.com. We're going to say for the complete play, go here. And so we just have a regular link. What I'm going to do is show you the pseudo class selectors of the link. Remember, a link, when it loads into a browser, by default, if it's never been visited, it's blue. Once it's been visited, it turns purple. And we can change some of those things and additional things using the pseudo classes. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of how these work. What you do with a pseudo class is you have the tag, but then using a colon, you can define a certain state. In this case, we could change a colon link to something, let's just say yellow. And so that what that does is that changes the default state. It changes the blue to yellow. In other words, just another way of redefining it. But we can then come in and change the visited links, which should default to kind of a dark purple, to something else. We can do orange in this case. So that allows you to change the state of the link. You don't have to come down and do anything to the link itself. The browser knows that if it's never been visited, it'll be yellow. If it's been visited, it will be orange. You can also do a hover. And this is kind of cool because it gives kind of a rollover effect. It gives you a little bit of interactivity. What you can do is you can say, when somebody rolls over my link, let's change the background color to black. And let's, of course, change the foreground color to white so they can still read the text on it. Again, this will happen to all of the A tags on the page. It will just change the properties for the different states of it. There's also another one, A colon active. When you actually click the link and hold the button down, you can change the color. It's not used a whole lot. The link visited and hover are probably the most commonly used ones. So let's just take a peek of how this works, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up this session. So I'm going to go ahead and save. I'm going to go back to the browser, and I'm going to reload it. There's our link at the top. Notice it is yellow because we've never been to this page. So we click on it. it goes to Shakespeare.com, and when we come back to it, notice that it defaults now to the orange color that we defined as our visited link. And of course, our hover is tied to our mouse movement. So when we move over the mouse, the background changes to black and the top font changes to white. And when I take it off, that A hover is deactivated and it returns to the state it was in before that. So that ends this section of CSS. In the next section, I'm going to actually spend a little bit of time focusing on quite a few of the properties that you'll use, and then we'll be pretty well versed in using our cascading style sheets.